Congress of Communities present Let's Talk. Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Talk. In today's episode, we are going to talk about gender diversity in politics. This is also a very exciting episode because we have a very special guest, Michigan's own Representative Rashida Tlaib. So, let's get started. Before we get to our special guest, let me introduce myself. Hi, my name is Yarita. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and today I am one of your hosts alongside Shama and Stephanie. Hey.
Hey.
So let's start with introductions, name, pronouns, and a fun fact about yourself.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I go by she, they pronouns, and a fun fact about myself is I'm a huge classic literature fan.
Hey, my name is Shama, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. A fun fact about myself is that I like pottery and I enjoy making small objects with clay.
Awesome. So let's get started. We're all members of Congress of Communities, also known as COC. We're in their youth council. Shama, could you tell us a little bit more about what the youth council does?
Of course, the youth council specializes in organizing communities, and they do this by helping the Detroit youth become leaders by learning about social, racial, and economic justice. So each year we implement a project about racial justice, and this year we're doing a mini podcast series focusing on gender and race.
Thank you. I'd love for us to talk a little bit more about what we're passionate about.
Well, this topic actually, I think a lot about how people like myself aren't always represented in decision-making spaces. So for example, I identify as non-binary and I can't think of a single person off the top of my head who is in position of power who also identifies openly as non-binary, especially coming from an immigrant family. It'd be a dream seeing someone with the same identity as me. Even that one thing can make a huge impact in someone's life. That's me.
Well, recently I've been reading a book called Can We All Be Feminists? And this book has made me realize that I'm very passionate about feminism. I also struggle with the dominant narrative about primarily white cisgender women who think they can talk about women and advocate for them when they don't even advocate for trans, Black, nor Latinas, or other people who identify as a woman.
Thank you all. I appreciate you both sharing openly. For me, I'm really passionate about politics in general, especially when it comes to increasing representation in women in politics. So I truly believe in politics and the lawmaking process because it can make a positive impact in the life of people who are often marginalized. However, within our own government, I think our elected officials could do a better job of challenging the status quo and ensuring the political process is accessible for everyone. So now that we have talked about ourselves and our passions, let's dive more into today's topic of gender diversity in politics. So let's talk a little bit more about it. Why is this an important topic?
Well, of course, it's important to have people in politics, especially women, who stand up for what's right, but who actually stands up for these underrepresented groups?
What do you mean?
Well, here's a scary statistic. Women of color comprise 20% of the US total population, and they only make up about 7.5% of all state legislatures. And Latinas come in at a lower percent. I think this is crazy, especially because the people who are representing them are white cisgender men. And how are they supposed to know the struggles that they face?
Wow, that's such an interesting statistics. I wouldn't think that would happen in our society today, but I guess, that's the world we live in. So, Stephanie, as a non-binary person, would you care to share how unfair it is that marginalized groups are wrongly represented?
Yeah, really not seeing yourself in these high positions honestly feels really discouraging at times. Not having someone who has gone through the similar things as you really puts you down and makes you think if change is really going to happen. And seeing people who look like you and gone through the same things as you gives you a bit more hope. That change can really happen because there's someone there with the same experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you both for sharing, actually, your thoughts on gender diversity in politics. Are you still listening? Up next, we have our special guest, Representative Rashida Tlaib.
Rashida Tlaib is our U.S. representative, born and raised in Southwest Detroit, and is one of the first two Muslim women in Congress who has always been a strong advocate for racial and social justice for us Detroiters. Hi, Representative Rashida Tlaib. So the Congress Communities Youth Council is made of Latinx teenagers from Southwest Detroit. We're all passionate about racial and social justice and giving back to the community. Each year, the Youth Council chooses a project to plan and implement which addresses a social justice issue. This year, we decided to do a podcast exploring the intersection between race and gender, and this episode is specifically about women, transgender, and non-binary people in politics. So we wanted to start off with asking you, what was your childhood like, and what were you like as a teenager?
I don't know. So my journey in Southwest Detroit, first of all, for all of those in Southwest Detroit, I went to Bennett, Harms, Wilson, which I think they call it Phoenix Academy. I think it closed down though, and then Southwestern High School. But I grew up right down the street from St. Gabe's on Norman Street between Woodmere and Verner and the Spring Wells kind of corner. So that was my neighborhood, born and raised. And then of course, moved on the other side of Verner on Rathbone. Was there over almost a decade, right down the street from Woodmere Cemetery. I mean, as a young person, it's really surprising for people to know, but I was pretty shy when people first met me. It took me a while to kind of open up and really trust people and totally, completely be myself. But I think as my mother kept bringing children home, because I'm the eldest of 14, I think all of a sudden I continued to just, I don't know, be more vocal, speaking up, becoming the caretaker, the advocate for the family, and then later even the social worker, the lawyer, the everything for the family. But I was definitely someone that wasn't always just about me, but if I saw something and I thought it was wrong or unjust, I would say something. I remember that about myself. And my grandmother, who came to the United States with nothing. She never went to formal schooling or anything and barely had any money on her when she came here. She came from Palestine to Nicaragua, was there about a decade before she came to the United States. And so, she really struggled here, but she was like that too. She was the person that she didn't take no for an answer, but she also wasn't very, I think she wasn't I've never seen her be shy, but she was never someone that stayed silently by when she saw something wrong or unjust happen in front of her eyes. But yeah, there's so many things to say about me as a child. I think my siblings would say something completely different. But even my family in Palestine right now will tell you, she's always said something about, women's rights or all these kinds of, there's this cultural thing where somebody's like, oh, look how beautiful she is. She's going to make a beautiful bride. And I would say, why a bride? Why does she have to be a bride? And I was like, how about, is she going to be a wonderful doctor or a teacher? So I know and when they remind me of that, I have those aha moments of like, oh yeah, that's right. I did used to say that. And I still do that. I always say to families as they're bringing their kids up to meet me, that I'm hoping they can celebrate at their graduations and things like that, which is not typically what you say to many immigrant parents, especially.
For sharing all that. I didn't think we had so much in common. I live in front of the Woodmere Cemetery too. And I'm also a very shy person, but doing things like this podcast has allowed me to be able to meet famous people like you and just be able to speak up. And I also have spoken up a lot, like tried to advocate in my family because most of us aren't informed. And I tried to be that person that's like, oh no, that's not right, and just I speak up as well. We know that you were involved in activism and community organizing prior to being in politics. What kind of work do you do and how does it connect to the work you do as an elected official?
Yeah, so Shalma, like one of the things that's been amazing because I'm a social worker at heart and as a community organizer, and you probably have that sense of, helping people understand that they deserve human dignity or to really show them, hey, this is not what you deserve. It actually can be better. and to teach people what is possible. And so a lot of the work I did as a community organizer, I continue to do even in Congress. Some people say, oh, there's Rashida, she's going to come, you know, and I'm considered tenacious. Or Sister Ilhan Omar from Minnesota has nicknamed me Mama Bear, because if anybody comes over after my district or our people, or say something that is so unbelievably painful to hear about immigrants or about people of different faiths, you know, I come out, you know, in full force to push back against that. But I think I've always been, you know, very much that way. I mean, I remember I was my mother's translator until I was 12 years old. And I remember going into Sears in Lincoln Park. And I remember my mom would always go up to the cashier, and she'd ask me, you know, in Arabic to say something to the cashier, and I would translate what she wanted to say. And I remember one time the cashier at Sears, I mean, she got so angry and was, you know, pretty much yelling that my mother should learn English. And the Southwest Detroit in me just kind of came out, because my head started bopping, and I said, excuse me, but do you not understand? I'm not translating what you're saying to my mother, because she understands English. She just won't speak it because people like you make fun of her accent. People like you say you want her to learn English, but you have no sense of compassion or understanding that takes time and that she is learning. And so I just remember walking away, my mother going, we can never go back to that Sears again because of you. Because I made a bit of a scene as a 12-year-old. But that 12-year-old girl is now in Congress. And yeah, I sometimes make a scene, intentional or not, in speaking truth to power or defending my neighbors. So much of that is still in me. But now, you know, I have a degree. I have this position now that, you know, I can use the power of the letterhead and to send to, you know, landlords are discriminating against companies that are trying to censor, towards a for-profit entity that want to increase mass incarceration, you know, all those things. And so it's been kind of cool, because in the past I used to call people or email them and they wouldn't respond. But now as a member of Congress, they always respond.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Like I said, we've actually met before over Zoom a few times, including one time over election night in 2020, where you invited me and some other Southwest Detroit youth to join on a Facebook Live. And I know the question I asked was specifically about what it's like to be a woman in politics. So I'm very passionate about this and think of running for office one day. I know students and teachers of mine, especially teachers, are like Campos for 2036. So I'm like, you never know. So what made you decide to run for office in the first place, as well as for Congress? And how has your career as an elected official been?
First of all, it's amazing that you can see it, that you're actually going to do it, where I could have never imagined at your age ever. Even the possibility of running for any position. I mean, even now that I remember that moment I first filed, I mean, I literally like threw up. My brother was with me. The idea of, you know, my name being on the ballot, being out there's a vulnerability to it that is kind of unexplainable until you actually do it. It's a very, I always tell somebody, it's, even though you're around people, it's a campaign full of people around you, it can be one of the most loneliest experiences. And so, I mean, it took 7 different people to convince me to run. I think folks that have to be encouraged to run are the ones that to me are more inspiring, because they aren't just like, you know, getting up in the morning and saying, looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, I'm going to be president, like some. They are waiting to feel needed, especially women of color, women like us. We tend to have to get so angry that sitting on the sidelines is just not an option anymore for us. And so for me, it was when my friend Shelley said, Rashida, people like us never think about running for office, and that's the problem. And I looked at her and I was like, yeah, but you've never run, so you can't just, she goes, yes, I have. I ran for my local school board. And for some reason at that moment, because she was somebody I really looked up to, she's fierce. She's a person that I'm like, when she comes through, I like feel stronger. You know how somebody walks in the room, you just feel stronger. That's how I felt when Shelley walked in, and it was that moment where the light came in the room, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And it was 10 days before the filing deadline, when I decided to run for Michigan State Representative. And I couldn't believe it. Even the day, the day when we found out I won, the next morning, I sat on my porch on Rathbone in Southwest Detroit, looking around the neighborhood. And I cried because I'm like, oh my God, now I'm responsible for like 100,000 people. And every time I press the button, it's going to be for 100,000 people. And I better, it's just, but the fact that it's because people like us care that deeply about making sure that we do the right thing about the people and the community that helped raise us. And so I'm excited because I see not only you, but so many other younger women, especially the background that the lived experiences that we're already going through as young as we are, young as you all are. All of that's going to come through in policy. All of that's going to come through in these positions of power that have yet to hear voices like us.
Yeah, it's almost really amazing how much I can relate to you. It's, I think, like having someone especially who like lived in Southwest Detroit, and it's just amazing seeing someone who like went through some stuff that I did, like the translating that you described. Same with my mom, same thing happened. And I'm I'm not the only one with the same experience, so I'm glad to have like someone I can relate to this much. But we know that people of color, women, transgender, and non-binary people, and LGBTQ people elected in positions experience different barriers that straight white guys who run for office. What has been your experience as a high-profile Muslim woman in Congress?
Yeah, it is difficult. I can't express to you all. It is such a different experience, especially on the national level, where, as a local state representative here, I got, the haters and some folks that didn't believe I should be in that position. I remember my really good friend Diana, who helped run one of my campaigns. She was working at a soup kitchen in Detroit. And, it was her last day. She was one of the volunteer coordinators. And one of the volunteers is there. And again, it's a very progressive human service based kind of organization. And she was, it's her last day. And they, the woman who she helped recruit had worked with her, said, she's really sad to see her leave. And she said, but don't worry, I'm actually going to go work for my state representative in Southwest Detroit. Diana lived in Southwest, and she said, she is the first Muslim woman ever elected in the Michigan legislature. And the woman looked up at her and she goes, they're in our government? And Diana was just like, what? Because it's a progressive organization. It's in Detroit. She didn't expect that kind of response that was full in many ways of the kind of othering that I feel like continues to happen for me in Congress. That institution just wasn't ready for me or the squad or any of us because of the way we speak about certain issues, the way we move with a sense of urgency that I think folks are not used to. And, I, in many ways, am like a walking bill. I don't care if it's me being Palestinian, Muslim, a girl from Southwest, a child of immigrants, a woman, somebody that's bilingual, a mom, all of those various so-called labels that come with me as I walk through the halls of Congress very much, creates kind of this agitation in the status quo there. But my mentor said something to me, and I want listeners and especially young women to know this. He said something to me after I told him, I'm in rooms and I'm saying what I'm saying, and then one of my male colleagues will say it and they're like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. And I'm like, I just said that, the same thing. And he said, even when you're physically present in the room, there are going to be people that will never see or hear you. the same way. And I've realized that, and it's not about us, right? I just want you all to know it's not about us, it's about them. And the fact that we're now opening doors for the next generation, so that maybe the more I'm pushing and knocking down doors, metaphorically, and opening up this pathway where an institution will finally change, where it's really reflective of our country, and inclusive in many ways. I always tell people, people in leadership in Congress constantly say diversity is our strength. And it's a beautiful saying, of course, but I don't want to be in photos. I want to be heard. I want to be part of policy. I don't want to just be sprinkled into a room saying, okay, we have some diversity here, or so forth. It's just absurd, because that table is getting really bigger instead of it being equitable, and that there's still more white males in the room, or people that don't look like us in the room, when we're talking about immigration reform, when we're talking about women in the workplace. There's more men in the room than there are women. And that constantly frustrates me.
Yeah, I feel like their ignorance is so absurd. Like that's why we have to speak up. And what do you think could make the political arena more safer and exclusive to women and trans and non-binary people?
Yeah, I mean, we really need to call out the continued violence and hate rhetoric towards our LGBTQ plus community, towards ethnic, faith, whatever, folks are coming forward. I mean, even a lot of colleagues who really don't even identify with the particular faith are targeted, right? Like, as if somehow that's, wrong, even though we're a secular government. And it is something that I think we need to do more in pushing back against that rhetoric, and calling it out when it's happening, because it is leading to more violence. I mean, I see increasingly colleagues, LGBTQ plus colleagues, communities of colleagues from, that are representing communities of color, really struggle, because as they're trying to represent their districts and do what's right and lead with compassion, bringing that lived experiences forward, they are dealing with death threats, dealing with constant security threats, and a number of, I think, very challenging times. And, I continue to say this, and it's important, folks want to focus on the attack on the Capitol and attack on a democracy on January 6th. And I said, but our communities have been dealing with what's going on January 6th in their own communities, in their own backyard, from the synagogue at One Tree in Pennsylvania, to the mosques in Texas, to, Charlottesville. I mean, much of what we saw on January 6th has already been playing out, or where to be visibly present in our communities already. They just, my colleagues got a taste of what many of our communities have been painfully dealing with.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, because I know, like you said, many of us have been dealing with those stuff in our own backyard. So now with the new Biden administration, there might be some new opportunities and things being passed that could positively impact Detroiters, women of color, and folks who have been often marginalized. So, like, what policies do you feel are important to you and your constituents right now?
Yeah, and this is a great question, because, and one, I want you all to know, most of the transformative change in our country, it really didn't happen because of who was in the White House or who was in Congress. Believe me, look at the history. If it's a Civil Rights Act, to pushing back against, corporate greed and helping folks be able to unionize in the workplace, which is huge. I mean, people actually died for the right to unionize and to organize, so they can have human dignity in their workplace. I mean, people died, our Black neighbors died so that they can have access to vote. All of that is to say that it was the organizing in the streets that finally reached the White House and Congress to act. It finally was able to reach. And it's because of that I continue to see that's where transformative change starts and really truly ends with. And I, continue to hear, folks saying, oh, President Biden. For me, President Biden is just the door of the possibility for better, for all those justice work that we want to see happen in our country. He's not the destination. Believe me when I say that he is not the destination. The destination is really stemmed with the movement work on the streets. So everything that we've been doing, from trying to push back and truly recognize that Black lives do matter in our country, trying to push back against those that continue to deny people human rights or dignity based on their sexual orientation, their gender, whatever it is, their faith, all of that. We need to continue to drive that up and be even more bold in regards to that. Because I find that some say, well, hey, President Biden's there. He's saying the right things. He's not so bad as the forever impeached president. And I was like, so what? If anything, this is the time to get louder. If anything, he's opening the door that you can actually have a conversation on the national level about climate crisis and the fact that we don't have clean water in our schools. We can actually have a conversation about what is happening in our school system where kids are not getting equitable level of education, a level of funding and education. We can actually talk about what is happening in our immigrant communities, the constant dehumanization that continues to happen in policy. And so I say to you all, everything that you're working on, if it's around the right to breathe clean air, to the right to be able to have access to read in our country, to the number of, I think, really critically important issues around poverty and economic justice, this is the time to get louder. And this is the time to make sure that movement work is reaching the White House so that the White House gets its instructions from the people it's supposed to represent.
Thank you so much. I really also want to know, what advice do you have for young people interested in pursuing work in public service? You'll
hear me say this a lot, but if you're wanting to run for office, just stay rooted and grounded in the community you represent. What I mean by that is, I hear a lot of people say, I'm going to run for office. And I was like, oh, what is it about your community? Oh, I just moved here 2 years ago. I'm like, where's the connect? Sometimes that you have to have a real connection to the community you were raised in, to be able to represent these, your neighbors, these communities that you want to go on this level and be able to represent. So staying grounded and rooted in movement work and grounded and rooted in the pain on the ground. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley says it beautifully. She says the people that are closest to the pain should be close to the power. And so that is so incredibly important. But your role when you seek out to run for office, know this, you can do it unapologetically yourself. People like you to be real. I'm never, ever going to be a polished politician. I'm just not going to be one. I don't know how, people say things to me all the time, like, why don't you do this? Why are you doing it? Why are you wearing that? Why are you saying it like that? Because they're not used to, again, someone like me in Congress or any elected position. And so, I'm going to always be a little bit more raw and a little bit more, I think, maybe it's more angry and passionate and everything because of, again, the community that raised me. It's been instilled in me of the injustices and the fact that we've been asked to wait for so long for changes and meaningful change. But please, whatever you do, know this, you can create that network. There are going to be folks telling you what to do, whatever, but in your gut, who you are, and stay grounded in that. And that the way to do that is stay really, really, truly rooted in the community you want to represent.
I know you say it's really important to stay rooted with your community. I just wanted to know, is it hard? I know a lot. It's really important, but I know that some people, it's hard after having assuming that position of power. It's hard to stay connected to your community, even after the work you used to do before. Is it hard to still stay connected?
I love that question because it's something I continue to struggle with at the beginning, but now I have a groove where I come home every week. I don't stay in DC. When we don't have votes and I'm not required to be there to physically vote, I will be in the community. And what I do, so I think it was last week, the staff knows. I was like, isn't it the season for cleanups? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I want to go to a bunch of cleanups. And it was great because I like showed up and nobody knew who I was for a little while. It was kind of fun. And then they're like, wait, isn't that Rashida Tlaib? I was like, and I was helping remediate this huge land in Virginia Park. And they want to put a playground there and playscape. And we were putting the hay down because they were reseeding it after putting brand new clean dirt there. And then I also got to go to, City of Inkster to do the same. And some of the seasoned citizens, as I like to call my older residents, were like, yo, oh my God, Rashida's here. But what's so great is just even being able to be there, picking up garbage, cleaning the neighborhood, doing all those things, that's going to keep you real. And so I always have to remind my team who control my life in some ways, the calendar, the schedule, as things are come forward, but they see how much happier I become afterwards. And they see my smile. They're like, oh yeah, Rashida needed that. And so you have to make sure that you set that, that those kind of guidelines, those processes, the culture you want in your office. Because I always tell them, hey, this is great. This hearing is really important, but how are we bringing the district with us in this hearing? What do you mean? I want the district needs to be heard in this meeting. How do we do that with our question line? How do we make sure our district is representative in what we're doing in DC? So I always call it bringing Congress to Detroit or to the district, and bringing 13 districts strong to Congress, and making sure that connectivity is happening. It's a lot of work, but it can be done if you're committed to it and you make sure your whole team is aware of it. Everybody that gets hired on my team, I have a full-blown conversation with them about it.
I think that's such a fun way to give back to your community, and like you said, to keep it real with your community. Well, while we're still here, would you like to add anything?
No, I think you all don't realize how much you're needed right now. What I mean by that is, like, we've been waiting. I know I have. You all need to think about running for office and being in these positions, and don't be afraid, because it's going to be folks when you come to your neighborhood, your street, your backyard, that are going to be the ones who are like, man, I'm so glad you said that. This is why you need to be there, because I'm telling you, I don't know how many tears I've had to wipe off my residents' faces saying, God, you said exactly what I was feeling, Rashida. Like, I've never heard anybody talk about the water crisis on the House floor, or talk about the racism coming out of the White House and white supremacy and how dangerous it is that we're not doing anything about it. So just know this is your moment. This is your time. And I'm just praying that I'm opening up as many doors as possible so that you all can come take over, because I don't know how long I can last, but I just know I'm inspired by knowing that at least I have a whole generation of young women coming right behind me to speak truth to power.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those kind words. I hope many people are, influenced and, take that advice to heart. So like I said, thank you for sharing and for joining us today about your own experience. And thank you in general for coming, because I know as a congresswoman, you must have a very busy schedule. It means a lot that you're supporting the work of youth organizers in Southwest Detroit. So I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Please be safe.
That was an interesting conversation. Now, Shama, will lead us into a debrief.
Thank you, Yaritza. And yeah, it truly was. I think my favorite part was when Rashida gave an inspiring talk at the end. It really makes me want to run for anything or everything. What were your guys' first thoughts?
No, yeah, she was more relatable than I expected. Like, not only did we grow up in the same city, but the same part, like here in Southwest. It's amazing that like a person that is representing you has lived in the same place and has experienced similar things as you. Just like her being shy and speaking up to her family, that really resonated with me because I would say that I'm shy, like very shy. And I also tend to speak up to my parents and correct them a lot. And I just found that relatable. But I would have never imagined that she was so shy. Just the way that she speaks now is really inspiring. And also the way that she was able to stay in touch with her community.
Yeah, during our conversation with Congresswoman Tlaib, one thing that got me thinking was the word stay rooted within your community. Like these words made me realize that community is who you are and where you begin. Like it's like a saying they say, home is where the heart is. So like this helped me know that people, no matter who they are, or even if they're politicians, that community is what makes you you. It makes you stand out and represent who you are, as in your roots or your qualities being represented.
I completely agree. Your community is who you are, and vice versa. You are your community. Now, would you guys say you were inspired or even surprised? Personally, I was surprised when she said that she decided to run just a few days before the campaign. I think this makes her seem like a very courageous young woman, and it inspires me to run because she's one of us and she won and she threw herself out there without knowing too much. And at the end of the day, she won.
Yeah, she really inspired me too. It shocked me because I know some politicians find it really hard to stay in touch with the community, and the way that she does it, amazing.
Yeah, I really love the advice she gave us. It's interesting to see that growing up here in Southwest, it can inspire you to do more things within yourself and even your own community, like she did. Her own community inspired her to work within itself and to, help make it better.
Based on what we learned, what do you guys think could change the levers of power in politics for women, transgender, and non binary people?
I believe that action within unity could change the levels of power, no matter what your level is. So, like, many more people from my generation are speaking up for the injustices happening, and that the type of actions we need from everyone, not just our own generation. Just because a specific gender has the right to be loud doesn't mean that the others should be quiet. They should also have a voice within ourselves.
Yeah, things that could change the level of power is more representation and laws that are being put into place that actually support gender diversity, because those laws represent us. But instead, laws discriminating women, transgender, and non-binary people are being passed. Black trans women are being killed at alarming rates. Trans people are being misgendered in articles way too often. When our very own humanity is being put at risk, it's hard for people to reach these levels of government.
Well, I think that starting from the bottom could definitely help change the levers in politics, like in our own community. Like Rashida mentioned, people power is what gets us a long way. I would like to add that there is often a lot of homophobia in the Latinx community, and we as youth can help to change that by having difficult conversations with our families and helping them to understand. Well, thank you guys. That wraps up our debrief for today. We hope that this episode can help start a conversation with your family and would help you to get more involved in your community and maybe run for office.
For any comments or questions you still have about the episode, follow our social medias and DM us your thoughts. So, did you like our podcast? We've got more. Check out our other podcasts in our Instagram at let's_talk Detroit. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.